The fast etude for year D is the Allegro mosso by Gatti. I'll confess that this is my least favorite etude out of all of the etudes in the 5 sets that we have for Lion's Band. I guess mainly because it just seems to be so much more technically difficult than any of the others. But it is a good and healthy challenge, so let's see how we can go about it and be most successful with it. The first thing I'll tell you is to start practicing early. I have generally been opposed to starting work on etudes for auditions like this too early in the year, as your audition can be harmed if you become so bored with a piece of music that your practicing becomes sloppy as the audition gets closer. That said, the difficulty of this etude, particularly for trombonists, necessitates a little bit more long-term, sustained effort. Trying to cram for the audition is always a bad idea, but it's really a bad idea in this case. Now let's define our terms. Our tempo is Allegro mosso. That just means fast and with motion. This etude should move. Then we have vigoroso, which means to play with energy or vigor. And then we have crescendo poco a poco. Get gradually louder, little by little. The marking is a bit redundant, but sometimes the redundancy can be a reminder that the increase in volume should be spaced out over several measures and not allowed to peak too soon. Our tempo. The instructions indicate that this etude should be played with a dotted quarter note at 72 to 92 beats per minute. At the slower end of this tempo range, the etude can be played with a fast single tongue. But at the faster end of the tempo range, it will need to be triple-tongued. Honestly, I find this one to be less physically taxing when played triple-tongued. That is, if you have mastered that technique. It is worth practicing. Now, speaking of time and tempo, practice this etude slowly and quickly. Whatever tempo you choose, I recommend practicing at half tempo, then 75% of tempo, then at tempo, then at 125% of tempo, and then at tempo again. Practicing slowly helps you to get the notes and play them in tune and with correct articulation, while practicing faster than the written tempo helps to make the written tempo feel more comfortable. Using a metronome is especially helpful when working on speed in this way. And let me give you one more piece of advice. If you're going to triple tongue it even when you're practicing slowly. If you single tongue your slow practice and then try to triple tongue your fast practice, you're kind of relearning it when you pick the tempo back up. Whatever articulation you're going to use, that needs to be the one you use at every tempo that you practice. Number 5, think big beats. Resist the temptation to think or feel this etude in 6 or even in 4, which works strangely. Playing in 2 will keep your playing light and efficient and prevent you from being bogged down. For the most part, observing the written accents will take care of this for you. The 2 feel even extends to the initial breath. Breathe for an entire dotted quarter note in tempo, or maybe even an entire dotted half note in tempo if you want to. This both sets up the 2 feel, as well as providing you with a full tank to begin the etude. Now, a little more about articulation. Although most of the etude is marked staccato, when moving this quickly through very articulated passages, don't try to play short. Instead, blow lots of air and tongue lightly, really allowing the tongue to ride along the airstream. This way, the staccato notes will be short enough without becoming clipped, and tongue fatigue will be minimized. The slurs are simple enough for tuba and euphonium players, but problematic for trombonists. Trombonists should observe as many of the slurs as possible, using alternate positions when needed to make it work. B flat in 5th position is especially useful in this etude. There are times, though, when the alternate positions are just too awkward or they're unavailable. On those occasions, the slurs will just have to be ignored. Changing vowels to affect slurs, for example, saying ah-ee when ascending and ee-ah or ee-oh when descending, is necessary and helpful for all brass players. Now let's talk about breathing. It's extremely problematic in this etude. You'll notice in my interpretation in the video that I slow down in a couple of places to create places to breathe, and in others I leave out 2 or 3 notes to get a breath. You're welcome to copy this interpretation from the video if you would like, or come up with your own. While slowing down or leaving out notes is maybe not ideal, I find it to be preferable to stopping the etude to breathe and then starting again. Maintaining flow is, at least for me, a greater priority. However you choose to go about things, plan your breaths and write them in so that you will remember them and enjoy the consistency that this brings. Planning your breaths will also enable you to leave out as few notes as possible. Number 8, dynamics and phrasing. The dynamic markings in this etude are thorough enough that if you simply observe the written indications, you will do well. That said, practicing this etude by playing the main melodic notes, that is, the accented notes only, and maybe even playing them legato, will help you to develop good phrasing, which then you should be able to employ when playing the etude as written. In other words, you're going to kind of skeletonize things, work out your phrasing, and then put it all back together and hopefully maintain that same phrasing. Number 9, keep your body relaxed. When playing a difficult etude with rapid articulation, it is very easy to become too tense, first in the face, then in the arms and shoulders, sometimes even in the stomach and the legs. You start to build tension everywhere and your whole body is kind of seized up. Now, while some folks might think that this is what working hard ought to feel like, the excessive tension is not good for your playing. It limits flexibility, makes your sound less resonant. It's just not good. Use no more physical effort than is needed to play well, and take care that your breaths, even the quicker breaths, are as free and relaxed as possible. The more relaxed you are, the better you will sound, and the more fun you will have playing as well. Finally, the key of concert E flat minor. While the key signature is 6 flats or 4 flats in the treble clef version, the key is not concert G flat major, but rather concert E flat minor. While mastering the concert G flat major scale will help with this etude, mastering concert E flat minor will help even more. If nothing else, it'll help you to get the sound, the tonality of a minor key in your head. We tend to, at least at the high school level, when our focus is major scales, we don't hear the minor scales and the minor keys as readily. So spending a little bit of time working on exercises in E flat minor can be very helpful. There's some material in the Arbin book, for example, that could work. There's also some stuff on the olemiss.edu/low brass website, some scale studies that you might find to be helpful. Now, any of these exercises can be a useful aid to mastering this key, but using a pencil to mark accidentals and possible key signature errors is always helpful as well.